And then I just fell madly in love with it. I mean, I started to learn about the integral roles bees play in our ecosystem. As I started to go deeper down the rabbit hole of the more medicinal grade bee products and how humans can use them to heal their health and improve their health, I just became obsessed. And so I started beekeeping in 2012. And that was really the start of my passion and my career in this world.
Welcome to this Female Founder World conversation with Carly Stein, founder of Beekeepers Naturals. Carly, welcome to the show. To kick us off, I would love for you to introduce everyone to what you're working on at Beekeepers Naturals.
Thank you so much for having me. I am Carly Stein. I am the founder and CEO of Beekeepers Naturals, which is a proactive wellness company. It's all about optimizing your health. I like to say that this company sits at the intersection of science and nature. We're trying to make science-based, truly effective products that help people feel better, get better quickly, support their immune health, support their digestive health, whatever it is from sleep to energy to brain health they want to tackle. We give them a natural, sustainable, effective, and science-based way to get it done.
What were you doing when the idea for Beekeepers Natural came about? I know that you have a very unconventional founder story with how you came to this company. So could you let people in on how this all came to be?
Yes. So for me, this came about in a very organic sense. It wasn't at all like I saw an opportunity in the market and, I thought I would capitalize on it. It was very much I was sick, I had a problem, and I solved the problem for myself after many grueling years. And once I had that benefit, I wanted to share it with other people. And I started thinking about how many people have this struggle. So for me, I'm autoimmune. I had chronic tonsillitis. And because of my autoimmune illness, I can't take most conventional medicine. So most antibiotics, I have a negative reaction to. It's very hard for me to treat myself when I'm sick. And I had a really weak immune system. So growing up, I was always sick and nothing worked. I saw every specialist, you name it, tried every wellness product. I was always really disappointed as a consumer in these latest and greatest wellness products that promised the world and didn't deliver on results. And when I was in college, I did a semester abroad. I got really sick during my time abroad. And it was in a pharmacy in Europe that I was first introduced to a substance called propolis. So propolis is a substance the bees make, totally different from honey, but made by the bees, found in the beehive. It's a fantastic immune supporter. A lot of people use it across cultures and in different parts of the world for day-to-day immune support. And I started using it, and it was the one thing that helped. It really changed my immune system and helped me get better quickly and stop getting sick on an ongoing basis. And after having that experience, I started to really think about, all the people who are autoimmune. It's a meaningful percentage of our population. And then beyond that, I started to think about my experience with health and wellness and how there were not a lot of alternatives on the natural, sustainable side that really got the job done. And I thought, there should be a company that's solving this problem. And it was from that place. So years of struggling with my own health, finding my own solution, that really led me down the path to create the company that I run now.
I think I read this somewhere, maybe I heard it on another podcast, that you were a beekeeper, you are a beekeeper, and that's kind of how you got into this space as well. Is that true?
Yes, very much so. So I was, to take it back a little bit, so I found this product while I was a college student abroad, this propolis substance, and I started using it and totally changed my immune system. I was able to recover from tonsillitis in like 5 days using the propolis that I had purchased at this pharmacy in Florence. And then I kept using these different propolis products that I would buy in different parts of Europe. And it was really interesting because in Europe, the different more nuanced medicinal bee products are very well known. In North America, we really only talk about honey. But in Europe, people are using things like royal jelly and pollen and propolis and all these different things that the bees make that we just don't really have an awareness of, or at least I didn't have an awareness of back home in North America. And so I started using all these things and they had a real impact on my health. And then when I came home to finish up college after my time abroad, I just couldn't find them anywhere. I went to the pharmacy, I went to the health food store, I went to farmers markets. I couldn't find these products. I could find tons of honey, tons of manuka honey, but I couldn't find propolis or royal jelly or pollen. And I was like, well, what do? I need this. Otherwise, I'm going to get sick again. And lo and behold, I did get sick again, and I didn't have my propolis. And I was, I had a little bit of a dark period there. I felt very defeated. And then I just realized, like, if I really want this, if I need this, I need to get it for myself. So I started beekeeping. It became my very strange hobby. It's not your typical endeavor for a college student. My friends thought I was completely insane. And then I just fell madly in love with it. I mean, I started to learn about the integral roles bees play in our ecosystem. As I started to go deeper down the rabbit hole of the more medicinal grade bee products and how humans can use them to heal their health and improve their health, I just became obsessed. And so I started beekeeping in 2012. And that was really the start of my passion and my career in this world.
I'm Australian, obviously, based on the accent. So I'm very familiar with manuka honey. And actually, my parents have bees, which is a funny similarity here.
I love that.
Yeah, they started doing it in retirement. It's a very funny little hobby that they've started, and they have the full kits. And anyway, I digress. But I'm really familiar with manuka honey, but I think that a lot of people probably don't really understand what the difference is between honey and propolis and pollen and royal jelly. Like, what are all of these things?
Yeah, so I'll do a really quick little beehive 101. So honey you can think of as the bee's carbs. It's their energy source. Honey, manuka, by the way, it comes from the manuka plant, so it's just a specific type of honey. But all honey comes from flowers. So the bees go around collecting these floral nectars, bring it back to the hive, mix it with their enzymes, let it ferment, turn it into honey, and it's their carbs. Propolis, you can think of as the bee's medicine or the foundations of their immune system. So while honey is the bee's carbs, you can think of propolis as the building blocks of the bee's immune system or, the bee's medicine. And so the bees will collect plant and tree resin. So think of like sap from a tree. And that's the base ingredient for propolis. And how they use propolis, they collect the plant and tree resins, mix it with their enzymes, and they make this sticky amber colored substance. And they use it to line the entire hive and keep it germ free. So for the bees, propolis is the antiviral, antifungal, antimicrobial, antibacterial substance that literally protects them from, all germs and pathogens in the outer world. And they even line the inside of the cell walls for newborn baby bees to create a sterile environment for newborns with propolis. So you can think of propolis as like the natural germ killer. For bees, it's their main defense system. For humans, you can use it in very much the same way. It's very high in antioxidants. It's something I use every single day just to support my overall immune health. A lot of people will use it to address things like inflammation. Because of its anti-inflammatory benefits, it's just, holistically really great for the body. But for me, it's something that I use to support my immune system. I use it every single day, and it's just like my number one thing I do every single day to keep my immune system on point. Royal jelly is another substance the bees make. You can think of this as like the bees' superfood or their brain food. So royal jelly is a substance the nurse bees produce for the queen bee. It's given to all newborn baby bees for the first 3 to 5 days of development. And then after they transition off onto a more regular diet of honey and pollen. So royal jelly is very nutritive, kind of like the way humans have breast milk, baby bees will use royal jelly. And then only the queen bee continues eating her exclusive royal jelly diet for the rest of her life. For humans, royal jelly has been used across cultures for things like hormonal stabilization, antioxidant support, anti-aging. In Western medicine, most of the studies looking at royal jelly have focused on its effects on the brain. So it's really great for focus, memory, concentration. It's a natural nootropic, so people use it just for boosting their cognition. We make our Be Smart Brain shots. So those are all natural adaptogenic shots with royal jelly and then 2 other plant-based ingredients, one called Bacopa monnieri, the other called ginkgo. And it's a shot you can take for focus, memory, concentration. There's no caffeine, no sugar, nothing, no funny chemicals that would disrupt your body in a strange way. It's just a good thing to help you really stay in the zone. And then last but not least is bee pollen. So bee pollen you can think of as the bee's main source of protein. They literally are collecting the pollen from the flowers, combining it with their enzymes, and bring it back to the hive. And, part of their diet, it's their protein source. Fun bee pollen fact, it contains more protein per weight than any animal source. So it's per weight, but more protein per weight than like eggs, chicken, beef, you name it. Bee pollen, I like to think of as nature's multivitamin. It's really high in broad spectrum vitamins and minerals, really great for energy boosting, really great for people who live a fast-paced lifestyle and just want to kind of cover their bases nutritionally. I take a scoop. I have like a teaspoon of bee pollen every single day. I put it on top of my smoothie. Sometimes I'll just take it straight, the same way you would do a wheatgrass shot or green juice. I take it personally in place of a multivitamin. I don't like using multivitamins. I like bee pollen because it's very bioavailable. It's something that your body can really just absorb and work with. And that's the hive breakdown. But for me, this whole journey really started with propolis, which is the medicine or immune system of the beehive. And it really radically changed my immune system. It took me from somebody who was constantly getting sick, constantly run down, constantly waking up with a scratchy throat, a lot of inflammation, to somebody who doesn't really worry about it, doesn't really struggle with immune related concerns anymore. It's, it's the most important part of my everyday routine. I have not gone a day without using propolis since I started beekeeping in 2012. I literally use it every single day. I went on a trip recently and I had a small freak out and I had to have propolis mailed to me. It's like I somehow didn't bring it. But yeah, it's a real rabbit hole you can go down. Humans have been working with bee products for a very, very long time. There's a ton of studies going on across the globe on different ways we can utilize bee products to support our health. So it's a really rich area to explore, but that was my quickie.
Amazing. Wow. So much good stuff in there. And I actually use the propolis spray myself. I get recurring tonsillitis and it's something that's been helping me. And while I was in the UK over the last winter, I was also like getting it shipped to me in the UK regularly. And I tried it once and then was doing it over and over again and kept reordering because it really is such a great product. But I wanted to zero in specifically on that product and the launch because you stumble across this ingredient that is improving your own quality of life. How did you go from, I'm guessing you were also working somewhere else at the time. How did you go from having this idea and deciding that this is going to be a fully fledged product line that I'm going to focus all of my energy on?
Yeah, so I mentioned I started beekeeping in college. During that time, I was also a TA for my chemistry class. So I was obsessed with chemistry and I was obsessed with bees and bee products. And I really had this dream of starting a wellness company surrounding these two things, on how to really utilize science and use different components from nature, things that are natural, things that are sustainable, clean, and make better products. But I was graduating with negative funds, as many college students do. And I was very fortunate to have a job offer in finance out of school. So I took that job because I was like, who the heck am I to start a business? I didn't have the confidence at the time. And I joined a hedge fund and I was working in pharmaceutical research. And about 10 months into that, I was recruited by a bank called Goldman Sachs, and I joined them as an equity trader. And I was at Goldman for just over 2 years. And it was during that time that I just felt I was really struggling with my identity, with what I wanted. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, but my heart was always in this world. I couldn't get away from my dream of starting the best possible wellness company. I wanted to create the wellness company that I wished existed all my life. And it just got to a place where I felt like I was living a lie. I was doing something I didn't care about, not in the way that I am passionate about this. And I was just solving the wrong problems. And it was really hard to leave because I had a very good on paper job. I was working very, very hard. And everyone thought it was a crazy idea. Who starts a natural product company made out of the nuanced bee products? The average person only knows about honey. They don't even know what propolis is. So when I tried to explain it to people, whether they were my peers or mentors, I got a lot of blank stares and a lot of feedback along the lines of, you should stay put. And so it wasn't very encouraging. I didn't really feel like I had a lot of support. I kind of felt like a crazy person. And it got to a point where I realized, maybe the crazy stares or the crazy responses and the blank stares are a good thing. This is something that's so new, so different. There's no precedent. Like, people can't say, oh yeah, like that company. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I'm onto something and this needs to exist. And I started doing more research on autoimmunity, on immune system, on medicine, on wellness products, on daily supplements. And I really felt strongly that there's a hole in the market. There, is a lack of science in wellness, and wellness is only kind of taking into account certain perspectives. And I want to make wellness products that are accessible to everyone, that are inclusive of different people with different issues, that address sustainability and environmental concerns, and that at the end of the day, just work, that do what they say they're going to do. And I didn't, up and quit my job then and there, but I started kind of moonlighting. I ordered a bunch of lab equipment, and I turned my studio apartment into this crazy lab. I got a lot of Breaking Bad jokes at that time in my life.
In New York?
Oh, yeah. And I would come home from work. And by the way, analyst hours at Goldman Sachs, coming home from work sometimes was very, very late at night. Even when I came home pretty late at night, I would do at least an hour. And so I started working on this in my spare time. Weekends, I spent the entire weekend. I would make all these products. And on weekends, I would go stand at farmers markets. I had a little booth. My first booth, oh my gosh, I was looking at pictures of it recently. I had like a cardboard sign that I painted. It was like, I don't even know how anyone spoke to me when I did that. But I started going to farmers markets and selling products. And it was kind of like, I would say, 70% young parents who were purchasing from me, and then some young professionals, a lot of people that like lived a fast-paced life and were interested in supporting their health, supporting their immunity, that found the science really compelling, because I had my printed out research papers, different studies I found on PubMed about how propolis can affect your health. And I started selling these products at markets, and I started to have recurring customers. Certain people would follow me around to my different markets and pop-ups I was at. I had this little email list, and word of mouth really supported me, and it started to grow. And it got to a point where people were asking, can you send this product to my sister-in-law in Chicago? And what happens when I run out, and all of this? And so I set up a website, and I started taking orders, and pretty soon it got to a place where I couldn't fulfill the demand. And I had enough consumer feedback that I was like, look, this is now working for a meaningful population. The science is here. There's enough studies that have substantiated these different health claims. We know that propolis is incredibly effective at supporting immune health. We know that propolis is something that people could really benefit from using on a daily basis across the board. We know these different bee products have these effects. This should exist. And so I left Goldman end of 2016 and been doing this ever since.
I love a founder farmer market story. I just think being that close to the customer, that close to the product, what kind of feedback were you getting, and how did that shape the evolution of your product line?
Oh my gosh, it was so huge. It was so huge. So, I talk to founders today, and they talk about marketing studies and focus groups. And I'm like, just go to a farmer's market and stand there for like 12 hours. Like, that's all you need to do. Yeah, I'll save you some money right now. It was huge. And I was doing that. I would go to 1 to 2 markets or pop-ups a weekend for, anywhere from, typically it'd be like an 8-hour day. And all I was doing was talking to different people who were using this product. Sometimes it would be someone coming over and letting me someone saying, well, I have a sore throat. Is this really going to work? And I would be like, open your mouth. And now you can't really do this, but I'd be like, open your mouth, let me put this substance in your mouth, and walk around and like circle back. And if you don't want to buy it at the end of your circling, we're good to go. And so I would do that sort of thing. But it was amazing, because what I was seeing in that setting was, it really bolstered my confidence. When I talked about the business, the concept, the idea with people in the finance world, people who I really looked up to in the business world, nobody understood it. But once I could actually share the product with consumers and see their experience, I was like, again, this is working. I know that this works. And it also shaped different things. So when I started the company, I had tinctures A lot of people found tinctures annoying. I got a ton of feedback on like form factor, vehicle. I got one of the hugest benefits of a farmer's market is just, and not just farmer's market, but pop up, all these different things I was going to, is you get to have a really deep dialogue and you get to, in real time, experience somebody being introduced to your product line. And so I learned a lot about our comm strategy. I learned a lot about, how to explain this in a way that's going, this stuff is not, it's not intuitive. I'm introducing an entire new class of products to people. And so I got to understand what's a way that this is going to make sense for my, different consumer demographics, for example, for my young mother, what does she want to hear about? What's she looking for? For my young professional, what health needs are they looking to fill? So that was an invaluable experience.
The company now has come a long way from just a stall at a farmer's market. I think it's fair to say. What was that leveling up process like? What did you do to intentionally take the company to the next level, and how did you fund that?
Yeah, it was, scaling is not easy. I always say as CEO, the most important thing you can do is strengthen your own resilience, because you kind of have to change your job. You have to, like, your roles and responsibilities kind of change every 6 months as the company grows. So you have to get really good at being bad at stuff and really okay with, beginner's mind. So really what happened there, at the start, it was very reactive. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't fulfill these orders. For a long time, I was literally shipping stuff from my apartment. The people at FedEx knew my name. I was running around with boxes all day before work, sneaking out during lunch, like you name it. It was very scrappy. Like I was bootstrapping. And it was when I started to get approached by retailers. So I got approached by a retailer and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, dream come true. And then they were like, yeah, we want to do a purchase order with this many units. It was in the thousands. And I was like, okay, I'm a one-woman show. I'll see you next Christmas. Like,
yeah,
that. And then I was like, talking to them about how long purchase orders are typical. And they were like, well, it depends on your co-manufacturer. And I was like, co-manufacturer, let's write that one down and Google that when I go home. And so that was really the first step. I realized I need support on the manufacturing side if I want to build this company at scale. And that was really the start of it. And then from there, Google was my number one resource. I learned about the interplay of co-mans in the CPG world. CPG is consumer packaged goods. And I went on LinkedIn and started cold reaching out to different companies. I finally convinced one to take me on, even though I could hardly pay. I had to do a very interesting agreement with them in terms of like paying them this much up front, then this much. Luckily, I leaned on my experience in the finance world to structure an agreement there. But that was really the start, and it was very much reacting to what the market wanted. Just my whole life was about service. It still is about meeting my customers where they are and making sure I can fulfill their needs and make the products available to them. And so it was like whatever I had to do. So that understanding purchase orders and what it takes in retail and finding co-manufacturing was my step one. And it was literally Googling what the heck this stuff is and then cold reach outs until someone finally responded. From there, I realized I did have to, I was self-funded for the first little bit. And I realized if I want to do this at scale and I want to move a little bit quicker, I do need some support on the funding side. So I went to all my contacts who I knew had a little bit of money. It was a lot of contacts I'd made while working in the finance world, and I shared the idea with them, and the idea sort of fell flat because, again, people didn't really get it. But then I shared my sales and my customer feedback. And then because it was a lot of guys, a lot of men that I worked with in finance, they then took the product home to their families and shared it with their families. And they came back to me and were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And so they had a total different perspective when they got feedback from different people in their lives who looked at, wellness and health in a different way. And that was when I did my first round of funding. And from there, I was able to make a few hires, and we've really just scaled up from there. And I've raised money two other times since. We are venture backed now. So going from an angel round to working with venture capital is quite different. But that is how I have and I continue to scale the business.
For people who maybe don't have that financial background but are looking into maybe doing some kind of angel investment, or they would like to do a friends and family round, do you have any advice on how to structure that or how to approach that might help people along?
Absolutely. So first of all, I definitely had an edge working in finance. I had some contacts that I could go to off the bat, but you absolutely don't need that. Angel investors are actively looking for great ideas and great founders to invest in. There are a ton of resources out there. So, just one of them is AngelList. There are so many different platforms you can post about yourself and your company on, and kind of the same way in the dating world, they have this in the investment world where you can connect with investors. I also met a lot of yes, the bulk of them at that stage were contacts in the finance world. I started going to a lot of events. I started going to a lot of any women in business talks, seminars, anywhere where I could hear from other founders, anything that had to do with the startup world. I figured out how I could be there, and I met a lot of contacts doing that. And I would go up to people, and there were a few people who I just cold reached out to. I found them on LinkedIn. I saw they are angel investors of companies that are in the wellness space, in the health space. And I was like, hey, I have a concept you might be interested in. And, I have to say, a lot of the people who I cold reached out to were the most impressed by me, just because that's a kind of scrappiness that people want to see. So do not be intimidated if you don't have a laundry list of contacts who you just can call up. A lot of the people I actually ended up taking money from in the early days were cold contacts, people who, I would go to these town halls, I would go to these events where I'd listen to people speak and go up to them after and share my company, share what I'm doing, I still do. Everywhere I go, I have product on me in case there's someone who I meet who I want to work with. But don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because that is very much rewarded in the entrepreneurial community.
What kind of traction did those early investors want to see? Were they interested in how many sales you had? Was it more about being able to show that you had the foundations in terms of a co-manufacturer or those retailer agreements kind of lined up? What did they want to see from you before they invested?
So for me, and it might be different for different people, different companies, but for me, all they wanted to see was sales. They wanted to see, does the product work? Do people like this product? Is their product market fit? And then they wanted to, learn more about my vision for the overall company. Because it started with just propolis, and they were like, okay, but what if we want to make, can you make sleep products? Can you make this? And I was like, actually, I have a whole deck about all the products I can make. And so, be prepared, be ready for these questions, make sure that you're communicating your mission, vision, and values. People want to see you thinking big. They want to see you thinking 5, 10 years out. They want to see what this looks like at peak success. So all you have to do is communicate your dreams. But for me, it was a lot of, I had sales at the time, and that was a huge asset, because I didn't raise money when it was just a concept. I raised money when I was actively selling something in the market. It was very easy to look at my sales, look at my growth, look at my customer feedback, look at the different retailers that I was starting to get inquiries from, and see, wow, people actually like this product. It's really working for people. This is compelling. So that's another piece of advice that I always give to entrepreneurs is, don't wait until you have $1 million or $100,000 or any amount of dollars in the bank. Get out there and start doing it. I did it with, almost no money in the bank, college debt, in a studio apartment with a full-time job. And I'm not that smart or special. I just worked really hard at it, and I organized my time in the right way. And again, angel investors and investors generally, they want to see you think outside of the box. They want to see you be scrappy. They want to see you be a hustler. They want to see you, not take no for an answer. So start demonstrating that, start living that, put yourself out there, whether it's standing at markets or, going to talks with people you admire and catching them after the talk and sharing what you're doing. Like, just really put yourself out there and be bold. That is my biggest advice. That being bold has really worked in my favor.
I'd love to know kind of, you've talked about the early days when you were working full time and you're doing this at night and you're going to the markets, but what does your day look like now? What kind of things are you across over the business?
Yeah. So now it's very different. I work very closely with my executive team. My goal, how I actually do it, I kind of have a framework for the way I talk to my executive team. So, and my executive team, I have different team leaders. So I have my COO who leads my operations. I have my director of sales who's leading all of our retail channel. I have my CMO who is leading all of our brand growth and then direct to consumer growth as well. And then I have my chief growth officer who manages our Amazon business, and my VP of people who manages all HR concerns, hiring, firing, people, recruiting. I have it set up where I'll join team meetings. So I definitely spend a lot of time with everyone at the company, but it's my executive team that I spend my day-to-day with mostly. And I'll have a check-in. Most of the individuals I just mentioned, I have at least an hour with them twice a week. And then we all meet together on an executive team meeting. And what I always ask, what my job is as CEO, is making sure that the vision is communicated, making sure that I have a real plan for 5-10 years out, and everybody understands it, making sure we have money in the bank, funding, investors, all of that is my responsibility, and making sure that I'm on an ongoing basis communicating a strategy and problem solving as it comes up and supporting the teams there. So all of my executives, when we have our one-on-ones, they know to give me certain pieces of information. They know to give me an update on wins, an update on goals, an update on team, and an update on roadblocks. And roadblocks is usually where we spend the most time. And my goal with learning about the roadblocks is really just getting involved, problem solving, either finding the resources they need, giving them feedback. And then it's also just, oftentimes they're presenting a lot of different options for different directions we can go, and I'm making a final decision. And then, I think that for me, because this company is really, I'm a real consumer of my own products. It was really something that I always wanted to exist. I like to sit really close to marketing, and I run product development as well. So I don't make a product that I don't take every day. I work very, very closely with my product dev team and marketing as well, because we're marketing really, at my company, marketing is more about educating. It's about educating people and empowering people on how they can support their own health, solve their own problems, take their health into their own hands. So that's so I don't know if I did a good job answering your question there, but my day-to-day is always different. And it's about understanding what's happening at every level of the business, ensuring that I have incredible team leaders in place and working with them to solve any problems and help them basically run faster.
Amazing. The last question that I ask everyone who comes on the show is just to share a resource. It could be a book or a podcast, someone that you follow, a community that you're part of, something that's kind of helped you grow as a founder and CEO as the company has grown.
So I didn't study business. Yes, I ended up working in the finance world, but my entry point was much more coming from, a research place. And finance is different than business. And I have the resource that I used in the beginning that I still use today. It's the Entrepreneurial Thought Leaders podcast. I adore that podcast. It's a really great podcast where they just bring on different entrepreneurs. I think it started out as recording some of the Stanford Business School lectures, but they have really great people talking about, how they solve problems, scale companies. It's much more giving concrete advice than sort of storytelling, which I really love. So that's a big one. And then Management Principles is a great book. I read that early on. I think it might be time for a reread, but that book, it's really great in terms of team building, structuring. A new one that I just read that I love, The Checklist Manifesto. I think for founders, because it's so chaotic, you have your hand in so many different things. It's a really great sort of framework. But those are three resources that I really love.
Awesome. You're actually the first person to recommend all three of those, which never happens. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much for coming on the show. For people who want to find you and who want to find Beekeepers Naturals, where can they do that?
For those who are looking to learn more about Beekeepers Naturals or myself, all of our information, beekeepersnaturals.com. We have a ton of information on our products, on the bees, and what you can do to get involved with the cause that is the plight of the bees. And it's just a great place. We've tried to really create a platform for health to answer people's questions and help them lead the best lifestyle possible. Our Instagram is beekeepers_naturals. My Instagram is stein.carly. And we're all over social media, so you can really find us anywhere. Our products are also sold at Target and Whole Foods across the country. And then, beekeepersnaturals.com. Check us out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your story. You've got some great tactical takeaways from that episode, so we really appreciate it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Female Founder World. I hope you loved it. And if you did, please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.